and welcome to Tremaine's Tangents. Today we are interviewing Morgan Quaid. Now, Morgan, could you give us a quick introduction about yourself? Obviously,
I certainly can. Or I can introduce someone else if you'd like. That's more interesting. That would be fine. But yeah, no. So I am a writer of predominantly urban fantasy novels and comics and graphic novels and screenplays that are typically horror related for some reason. Yeah, writer and also a channel owner of my very own YouTube channel with all sorts of writing tips and hints and stuff. I know it's amazing. It's like you wouldn't think in this day and age someone could own a channel, but I do. And that's it. Oh, and also a musician and music producer and other stuff. But we're here to talk about words. So for the purposes of this podcast, I am a writer.
they can't see it, but there is about, I think, 50 guitars and banjos behind you. So, yeah, that would make sense.
Yes, that would be the music component.
So, Morgan, there's not a controversy, but there is a
Lot of opinions floating around at the
lot of
moment.
opinions floating around about the use of AI art. A lot of people are saying that a lot of people are saying, but there are people saying that this is not good for artists, that the art is stolen. What you said that you use it in inspiration sessions. So how do you work with that? What is your opinion on AI art? I know it sounds like I'm high. I'm not. I'm just tired. All right.
All good. All good. Yeah, so I'll start by saying I come, as we said before, from a music background. So I'm intensely aware of copyright and copyright infringement and all of that sort of stuff. Anyone that's ever done anything on YouTube has probably experienced you're using music that's copyrighted and all that sort of stuff. I've actually had the unique experience of composing music in this room, selling that music myself as a distributor, putting that online on YouTube, and then getting a copyright notice because someone else has bought my music and used it for their thing, and because they were the first one in, they've put a copyright notice against me. I've also had the circumstances where some of my music is copyrighted by companies that I work with, and they'll put a copyright thing, and I'll sort of say, yes, I know it is still me. And anyway, so I'm incredibly aware of it, and we need to protect artists and their work and all the rest of it, because there are, frankly, so many ways to easily take credit for stuff that isn't yours and just make a buck out of it. Essentially, there are lots of different places where NFTs and all this sort of stuff, just producing things that clearly aren't their artwork and trying to push it to make a buck. So that's a risk. This is a weird one though, because it is not quite strictly just pulling from one artist and then reproducing like for like and then saying this is mine. This is this weird amalgam of ideas and stuff that's very quickly sort of come together. So I think it is in a new category, and because it's new, that makes it harder and makes everyone incredibly opinionated on it, because of course it's it's new and it's the big thing and all the rest of it. I use it myself. So I have a thing called aphantasia. I think we spoke about it last time I was on, where I don't really have a visual imagination. So when I'm writing, it's very hard for me to imagine up front the character that I'm describing and all that sort of stuff. So I've started using it recently to try and visualize, if you like, some of the characters that I'm going to be working with, and then I'll use that image as a rough guide. But there's a difference between using it that way and then putting it on a book cover or selling it as your own art or
Right.
something like that. It's very, very different to use it for inspirational. So for example, I just put together a poster for a film that I'm working with the director on. I've got the imagery, I've done all that stuff, and I thought, well, what I really need though is I need an old west sort of hotel that's on fire and there's a red moon in the sky and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So of course I just go searching for that, and then that gives me inspiration around what it could look like and where I could position things. But I'm not going to use that image in the actual poster, because then that is, and I don't even know if it's a breach of anything yet, but again, trained from all these years with music, my immediate thought is surely I'm breaching something somewhere along the line, and I don't want to get this out there and then, in 10 months time when they make a ruling on it, all of a sudden, Morgan Quaid has destroyed the internet by stealing things, and so I'd rather play it safe than go the other way. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, that was a rambling answer.
It is called Tremain's Tangents, so
fair point.
We had to change it. Too many tangents. It's easy to change the podcast than to fix our style.
That's true. You got to be true to yourself as well. You don't want to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
If you're a tangent junkie, then just go with tangents.
Precise. Yeah. No. So now, while we're talking about AI art, so you use it to visualize your creations. Thank you.
Maybe.
How do you? I guess this is not the correct way to go, but how do you sleep at night? No. No. So when you're brainstorming and you've got these different AI artworks, do you see it as now there's a job missing, or do you see it as there would never be a job? It would just be going on Pinterest.
Well, okay, so in my case, very specifically, there would never be a job. So I work with a lot of comic artists on multiple projects all the time. So if I want an actual drawing that I can use, I'll go to one of the artists and say, hey, can you do up something like this? But before I do that, I'll be on the internet and I'll be getting stock images and kind of smashing them together and saying it's kind of something like this, and then they will come up with something. But the thing that I'm always stipulating with artists is it still has to be as unique as possible. So please don't copy these, but do something of this style, but maybe slightly different hair and eyes and all the rest of it. So I would be doing that anyway. And for my own novels, I would just grab stock images or even images of, famous, well-known people to use as inspiration. Because again, most of my description is not detailed enough that you're going to know from reading it. He's talking about, I don't know, Tom Cruise or such and such or whatever it might be. You're not going to know. You're just going to know, okay, it's someone that's roughly this height and they've got eyes that are roughly like that.
He's the size of...
Sorry about the height reference, but Tony
Tom Cruise.
You're not going to know straight away.
For the Family Guy fans, Tiny Tom Cruise.
I will say there is a point there with, like, whenever I've seen adaptations of books, it's always interesting to see how close they got to what I pictured people to be.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It's never quite there, and you think, it's the same with audio as well. When you get an audiobook come out and they pronounce certain names and you think, well, that's not right. That's not what was in my head. This person's making a meal of it.
I did in my book currently that I'm writing. Jag said, because he's one of my beta readers. He's one of my betas, and he
absolute beta.
He said, "How do you pronounce these words?" And so in the new transcript, I've written the one of the characters going, like, actually sounding it out phonetically.
Yeah.
Like, what is blah blah blah? I wonder if it'll work. It probably won't work. I'll probably delete it, but it was one final fuck you to Jag.
That won't be the final one. I know you. There's plenty more.
So
coming.
Jag, so Jag is has a weekly D&D group. Oh great, the picture's gone funny again. Jag
It
has a
still
weekly.
sounds fine coming through. So
Jag has a weekly D&D group. I look like a rap video. So the Jag has a weekly D&D group, and so he probably wanted to ask you about your D&D inspired comic? No, graphic novel.
Comic. Yeah, comic.
Okay.
Well, yeah. It's a large comic, very small graphic novel. Very, very
Okay.
small graphic novel.
Yeah, we just wrapped up playing after I think 4 years in this one campaign. It was
Wow.
very long. But yeah, I saw that your upcoming comic says that it takes place in a D&D inspired tavern. And I was trying to work out what does that mean.
Okay, so what that means is, so I have wanted to play long form D&D for many years and struggled to find a group and the time and all the rest of it, like a lot of us. And then I started following Critical Role when they kicked off, and that whole thing sort of started, and it was kind of like by which I suppose a lot of people have by observing someone else having fun doing it. It's kind of like, well, I'm kind of joining in, even though I'm definitely not joining in. And so there's always been that hole, or that kind of role playing hole that I've had. And I'd never written a comic with, when I say D&D style, characters and stories and everything. It's more it's fantasy effectively, but there is a kind of Goliath character. There's a goblin. There's a human. How dare I? And dwarves, and so it's those sort of the staple kind of fantasy characters, which tend to pop up in D&D sort of stuff as well. So there's a dual purpose. One was for me to sort of explore some things that I'm desperate to get more involved in, and to try and make the characters pretty unique and a little bit weird, but also seemingly part of this world, because there's this thing with D&D where they're all mashed together, and you think, in what other reality are you going to have like a one-horned troll sitting next to this little goblin person? And there's this thing where like the band comes together, and you think it just, but how? And I suppose that's a DM's job, is to how do you manufacture it so that these characters all come together. So I like the idea of having a tavern where they're all eating and drinking and everything, and all very different, but they're kind of connected in that way. And then the other thing was quite practically, I write comics and I that sort of stuff. I want to bring in the D&D crowd, because come on, man, they've got to have money. Surely, stop. Don't buy any dice this month, and just support this instead of dice, and you'll be fine.
If Jag's any indication, I don't think they do.
I was just thinking of the recent controversy with the proposed OGL update leak.
Yeah.
And it was basically the same thing. They must have money. How do we get more of it?
Yeah,
like not like that.
Right.
And there's some similarities to the AI art thing in that. Controversies there.
Don't worry, we're all trying to get money out of people here. This podcast isn't just... This
podcast is just for you to get money out of me, isn't it?
Yeah, I just work you like a dog.
Oh, okay. Because I was curious, like, because no spoilers, of course, but like when I saw D&D inspired, I was like, okay, so does it just have all the elements that came from Tolkien anyway, or is it like really loose, and it's just like I had an idea and then it goes off from there quite sharply, or is it like almost like a mini campaign that people are going through? But it sounds more like, well, I mean, it says on the Kickstarter inspired, and I think that seems like the right choice of words. It's not I don't know how
Yeah,
to say it.
it hasn't come directly out of a game or any experience with gaming that I've had myself. And one of the things that I did do that was slightly different was I went to not just some of the artists I've worked with traditionally, but I went to artists that do a lot of D&D portraiture and that style
Oh
artwork,
yeah, yeah.
and involve them in the process. So it's the first book I've done that's got portraits. So that the idea is they're portraits that are on the wall of the Crimson Folly, but they're also part of the book. Um, and then I went to some artists that do a lot of that style stuff for the interior artwork as well. So that's the other kind of area that I explored. But yeah, the story itself is because you have a limited time to tell a story, and the main thing for me is that the story makes sense and it's interesting, and at the end of it you're kind of thinking, well, now I need to know what comes next. It's got to have those elements, and I think that's quite a hard thing to do in 56 pages or 40 pages than the actual story. So yeah, so it's more of a traditional story, comic story, but with some of those other things that I think D&D aficionados will recognize as kind of being like, yeah, I kind of get that kind of deal. But also, it's fantasy.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause I remember me and Tremaine talking about how deep a background or an explanation, how many levels you go on everything, and I think we settled on two levels as appropriate. Like, these people are doing this. Why? Because this has happened. Why did that happen? For these reasons. And then you just sort of stop there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, so D&D inspired. Like, does that affect the background of the characters? Like, do you have this unspoken background where it's like, oh, these characters are religious. This one is a follower of Helm, or the world is sort of. I think the most common setting would be Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, so the beauty of having it in because it's also the only comic I've done that all takes place within one location, as in a fairly limited location. So the
So many
genius of that
interesting
is
things that do that too.
yeah, and so the genius of that is it means every one of the characters that you come across seem to have their own story, and they've come to the Folly at a moment in time in that broader story. So one of them is a pirate queen, and of course, everyone wants to know, where did she come from? She's obviously a bit of a mob boss kind of figure in the setting of the Folly. So there's a lot that's come before, but I don't have to narrate that in the thing, which is great. So I can do that later if that comes up.
Would you say that it is similar to Hyperion in that sense? I don't know if you've read Hyperion, but this idea that all these different characters coming from different sections of the galaxy come together and tell their stories. Is that the sort of idea, or is
you're exactly right. It's less of the storytelling though. It's more of a thing is happening and driving the story itself. But the idea is they're in this chaotic fantasy world with wars and rulers coming and going and all this sort of strife and turmoil. This, for some reason, this little cobbled together tavern seems to always survive, and there are wealthy people, there are scoundrels, there are poor, there are itinerant religious folks, there are all sorts of. So it's such a mishmash of people because it seems to be the one stable component of this broader fantasy world that I don't really explore in the book, but you get the sense that, okay, this is like a way station that everyone sort of is comfortable to come and go from. The usual rules, no violence inside the walls and all that sort of stuff is sort of implicit. But it's that, hence the diversity of characters, because and the Folly itself being like a character that is the sort of stabilizing force for everything else that goes on there.
I feel like that's something we've mentioned previously is settings as characters, and yeah, absolutely agree. Is that what we settled on, Jermaine, with regarding like the world is also its character and all that sort of stuff.
Well, so yeah, there's this idea that
I don't remember the episode.
there's been so many. We're nearly up to 50.
Oh,
So
lordy.
so there is this idea in fiction that the I just can't get over how weird that.
Ignore the camera.
You do look like you're on an 80s rap video. That's or 90s rap video, I should say. Yeah.
I got you guys just appearing and disappearing at the top, and me just going what. Anyway, so yeah. So what I was going to say is, so the idea of the world being a character is a little. I mean, the concept itself isn't cliche, but saying it is. So
Okay.
you know it's cliche if Brian says it on Family Guy, and he says when I remember him in the episodes like when I plotted this scheme, I thought of Quahog as a character, and it's like god. And
Yeah, it's out there now.
it's a good concept because the idea that the society around you is not just this place for you to spatter your paint everywhere, but actually has its own paint and is its own moving creature is quite important. But also Brian said it, so
Everything we discuss is usually cliches anyway.
yeah.
So that's fine.
Anyway, so what interested me now is that you started your YouTube channel on teaching young writers about well, not just young writers but beginner writers about the writing craft. Now I've done something similar that's getting released in February, but what inspired that?
Well, so originally, essentially what inspired it is people asking questions. So a lot with on the comic side of things, I'd have directors and actors and stuff that had done films and other sort of things, but they'd come to me and they'd say, "Oh, I'm really interested in doing a comic book." Which to me just boggles my mind. I'm thinking, but you're doing film. But that's the thing. That's the thing we all want to do.
You're already winning. Why do you want
Yeah,
to
that's
do
right.
films?
Why would you want to do less than that? But the time it takes, the cost, everything else, it's apparently fairly barbaric. So I had a bunch of people coming there, and I would spend 2 or 3 hours just going through all of this sort of stuff. And there's so much involved in from start to finish. And what I started to realize is, as well as what people were interested in and what they weren't necessarily asking the right questions about, was the business side of things as well. Because no one wants to hear that when you're a writer. Like, you've got an idea and you think, I'm going to do this amazing thing and it's going to be this epic, quad trilogy, if that's a thing, whatever, it's going to be massive. And then you start writing and then you get your first book done and then you think, okay, where are the people to buy my book? Where are they, and why aren't they buying my book? And why don't they know about my book? And why don't they know about me? And so there's the whole, promotional thing, and then there's marketing, and then there's all of these practical things that you just don't know about when you're coming into it. And there are places to find that information, a lot more now than what there used to be. But I find as well that there's, so I run my channel by my own attention span, if that makes sense. So if I'm already getting bored, I will cut the video right down to the point that I can consume that amount. Because for a writer, I am incredibly impatient, which makes me very productive, but not the traditional kind of, it's not always a good thing to be impatient as a writer. So anyway, so it all started from questions that people were asking, and I thought, hey, this is something that I can offer in my day job. I do quite a lot of training. I run a training team, so it sort of comes naturally, this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, why not? Why not try and, because I do genuinely I like talking about this stuff, and I like helping people, and I like that moment where you can see someone heading down a path and you think, if I just just nudge you slightly that way, you'll avoid this big hole that you're heading towards that I've already fallen into. So yeah, that was kind of the reason, and it's one of those things that it's just, you know, I'm giving it a good crack for the next 12 months, really seeing where it goes. I've already learned a lot though. The weird thing is, you very quickly learn when you start interacting with people, they're different to me, and my assumptions about other people are not always correct, which is really helpful to know. Yeah, I just assumed. So the perfect example, I assumed everyone has the same issue that I have, which is not starting. So starting, I've got no issue with. I can start a million books, a book a day, no worries. The ideas will never stop coming. I have to fight back the ideas to stop from sort of, you know, not sleeping. So starting is never an issue for me. The middle part, I've started and now I'm just going through the motions to get to the climax. That's the bit I really struggle with. So I assumed everyone struggled with that. Then I start talking to people and I'm hearing, no, a whole bunch of people never get started. They're stuck at I can see this massive thing ahead of me. I've got no clue how to get there. It's too daunting. I'm just not going to start, which boggled my mind because I just thought, well, but that's the easiest part. And then I realized, well, that's the easiest part for you, Morgan. It's not the easiest part for everyone because people are different, which I forgot. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, that does not sound typical. Most people I've heard from say, you know, like the scariest thing is that blank page and how hard it is to get it to change.
I don't know.
You need to change it.
I've never had that issue with the blank page thing. I always have the same thing, which is if I'm going to write, then I usually have something written down before I even start thinking about it. So
yeah, pages don't stay blank for long.
No, and I don't understand how. I understand the middle part getting hard because you're like, oh, is this a good idea? Is this a smart move? Am I about to waste 6 months of my life? Which you are.
Yep. Yeah, and that's part of the. So there's probably three parts. So one of them is the basics of, you know, writing and all that sort of stuff, because a lot of people just don't know, like, how do I start and what's, you know, there's that component. There's the business side, which I think because I've had to do it for so long, it interests me and it excites me, and I don't know why, because the idea of going to a sales pitch just fills me with, you know, just distaste and horror. But anyway, but for some reason, when it comes to this, I think it's something that so many people are missing, so it's something I can offer. And then the other thing is just, well, it's two things. One is just basic encouragement, just, you know, like, come on, you can do it, you know, all that sort of stuff, which we all kind of need. And then, frankly, this is 4 points. I realized I should have said 4. Frankly, just I can. It's like having my own TV channel. I can just do stupid stuff, funny, stupid, weird stuff. So occasionally you'll see a video pop up that has nothing to do with anything. Like I did for one, for example, I did an ad for a cult that I made up, like a TV ad selling this cult idea for this cult called Triangle. Just because I thought it was hugely funny, you know, a cult going to an advertising firm and saying, can you please, you know, produce our thing.
I did something very similar with our well, it's not our channel, but
it's yours.
So there's a video on it that just is green eggs and ham read aloud, and I read it in the most passionate way possible. It's just this most passionate Shakespearean reading of it, and I get really angry at certain points, and it's the same thing. It just makes no sense whatsoever why it's on that channel. And
it's not good.
It's not good,
but it's dramatic.
It's true. How dare
and
you're fired.
It's fun. You got to have fun. You know, you got to, because it is a lot of. I mean, the other thing is a 5-minute video, or let's say an 8-minute video, would take about 5 hours to produce in terms of writing, filming, editing. It's a huge investment of time. So if I'm not having fun somehow doing it, I'm not going to do it because it's just too. It's like writing a novel. If you don't know up front, I think there's enough here that I'm going to be able to keep myself going, then I wouldn't do it because it's just a lot of work. And it's also like, I mean, I'll be the first to say I have a beautiful face. I'll be the only one to say I have a beautiful face. But you're getting your face out there, constantly shoving it in front of people. It just feels like the grossest thing to constantly be saying, "Hey, look, pay attention to me, subscribe to my channel, come and talk to me." But that's all part of it, obviously. So yeah, I think having fun's the key. Having fun and being able to explore some of those silly little ideas that I have all the time. Whether or not anyone cares about those bits and watches them, I honestly don't care because I'm doing that. Those bits are for me, and they're tremendously funny in my own head, and that's all that matters.
If you're new to Morgan's stuff, go check out his social media and see how many pictures of him with his mouth open there.
Always with the mouth open. And I realize I do this thing because you only realize this when you start recording and seeing yourself over and over and over again. I always show up my nostrils. I lift my head when I'm making a point for some reason, so everyone gets just a stellar view right up the nasal passage. I'm trying to not do that so much, but it's just one of those things I do. And yeah, the shorts algorithm thing, or not the algorithm, but the shorts thing. When you do a short on YouTube, it always cuts it. It seems to always cut it on when I've got my mouth open, which either means I've got my mouth open a lot, or YouTube hates me, or both.
YouTube hates everyone that doesn't give it money. It's a vicious platform that I love. It's like an abusive, beautiful girl. It's just you just keep.
You can't help yourself,
but only sometimes if she feels like it.
You just keep coming back for more. All right, let's move away from that. Okay, so when you're giving advice to new writers, are you aware? Have you made it clear, very clear, that the writing advice that works for some people doesn't work for everyone else?
No, I 100% say that my advice is the only advice, and it will work 100% of the. Yeah, of course. So the caveat is, and I honestly struggled with this for a while when I first started. I was going to put a bit at the start of every video, basically, that said, almost backstepping, saying, "Look, I'm not, I mean, technically I am an award-winning writer, but I'm not like a multi-million-dollar, author. I don't have massive deals. I'm an indie author, But then I thought, hang on, starting a video that way, you're already kind of undercutting your own message. And my view on the whole thing is, I don't need someone to be the top of their field to take advice from them. I need them to be ahead of me. You know what I mean? I need them to experience the stuff ahead of me so they can say, hey, watch out for this. I've tried this. It didn't work, blah, blah. But all the way through, this is my experience, not this will necessarily be your experience.
Because this is the trouble I ran into making my channel. Is I was like, well, who am I really to tell people what to do and what not to do? And then I also remembered the very important lesson I learned, which is no one really has the correct answer except you. For you.
Yeah.
And this sort of idea that you can buy all the classes to BBC Maestro and Masterclass, but they're not going to teach you how to write unless you actually get yourself onto the page and learn your own methods.
Yeah, and there's a very big difference between inspiration and something that gets you energized and makes you think, yeah, I can do this and I'm going to go back to it and keep going versus I'm very wary of step by step guides. Like I watch a lot of them because I'm interested to see, okay, how does someone else do this? But I tend to use I a lot when I'm talking because all I can tell you is my experience. And my experience is I'm an impatient writer. I don't do full outlines. I never know the ending of a book when I start it. Most books I get finished within 3 months. That, and they're maxing out at 90,000 words because I'm too impatient to write anything bigger. But all of that is because of 15 years of trying and failing and trying something else and failing and eventually getting to the point where I know the style I write in, I know my brain, I know the way it works, and I know how to trick it into being productive. And I know also what will not work. And there are many things that won't know. So it's like that with everyone. It's great to hear advice and to think, yeah, I'm going to try that. But then if you try it and it doesn't work, that's fine. Then try something else because eventually you're going to find your kind of, like you're saying, you're going to find your rhythm and how you do it and what your voice is and all that stuff. But that's the big thing that I think most new writers don't get, and it's a lesson I'm trying to drum in as much as possible. You get better at writing by writing, and you need to do a lot of it, and you will not be perfect on your first book, and you just have to start and keep going and keep learning and it's that thing that a lot of people don't want to hear because they're expecting their first book to be genius and peerless and perfect.
Not just the first book, the first draft as well.
Yeah, first draft. That's right.
They're hoping for the first draft to be perfect, and it's like, oh, mama, no.
No, the thing that I've said a few times is that the job of a first draft is to get done. And that's it. It's to get through it, because that's when you start editing and shaping and actually making it into something that might be, some form of novel by the end of it. But at the start, my first drafts are incredibly ugly, and they'll have huge chunks where it just says more here, because I cannot be bothered writing. Like a dialogue, I'll usually do all of the dialogue because that's easy for me to write. Some of the action I'll do because that's really easy. But when it's like, okay, I've got to figure out how to get this character from this room into this other building. I don't want to write that he's walking and opening a door, and I'll just leave it. So I just, skip ahead. You'll see that all the way through my first draft, because when I go back, that's when I've got more time and I take, step by step, and then you can sort of see the whole picture a bit better. And also, by then I know how it's ending, so I can weave that through the early part of the story. It's not this thing where I think there are some people that might work this way, but there are very few people that when they start a book already know every detail, even if you've got a full outline, because as you're writing, things are going to come to you and it's going to change. And so it's that whole thing that the thing that turns a draft into a novel is the editing and the editing again and the going back over it, and that, like polishing a stone or some other sharpening a sword. I don't know, whatever.
Polishing a river stone.
There you go. That's what it is. Just like that, for example.
$500.
It does make me think of every week a different person would do a recap of the events in our D&D game. Posted up onto a Facebook page, and for one of them I actually wrote like, this happened, all this stuff, and then I was just like, star wipe somewhere. It just continued. Like, there's no good, or I didn't have any good like A to B from there, because it was just us sitting around a table for half an hour discussing stuff before anything happened, and it's like, just skip it.
I think that's a much better way.
And there are two really racist people in Jag's D&D group who just constantly bring up about the goblins. They just can't stand the goblins. And Jag's one of them.
Goblins.
And Jag's one of them.
I did play a somewhat racist character, but it worked. It was a fey elf who just really hated dark elves, which is not. It sounds bad that way.
But it does make sense within the world of D&D
Within
and
the
the light fae
context
and
of
the
the
dark
world,
fae.
it makes sense, but I don't care. All I heard was he hates dark elves.
I had to bring in a new character with a good reason to join the fight quickly. And it's like, oh, some stuff happened off in the Feywild, and she was sent here, and basically just she wants to kill them all.
Well, there you go. But you never know.
Like, oh,
You could
that's
have a
easy.
redemption story, somehow
Redemption
towards
arc.
the end. I am now no longer as racist as I was when I started. And there was much joy in the land. There you go.
And
There
then,
was, and somehow this feels more racist. There was one good one which teamed up with us. And it's just like, oh, this is just more
That's
awful tropes.
yeah. That's the no. I have a friend who is such and such. Yeah.
Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom.
Because at the same time, it's a really good story.
Uncle Tom's Cabin. Yeah, no.
But
Jake.
definitely Starlight.
I mean, in my book, the racism is against aliens, which is an obvious.
Is that an allegory, or
No, it
did
just
you
makes
have something
sense.
in mind at the time?
It just makes sense to me that that if there were aliens, humans would band together, and if we dominated them, we would be racist to them. It just seems
So
to make sense to
optimistic.
me.
Well, you see it. I mean, you see it in history. America and other places where one group of migrants will come over and they're despised by everyone else, and then a new group will come over and then everyone despises the new group more than anyone else. It's whoever's newest and
You saying
not the victors.
Are you saying there was something wrong with the treatment of Italian Americans?
I'm saying there was something wrong with the treatment with just about everyone. Anytime, it's either new people coming to an area and just getting battered when they turn up, and for years and years and years until the next one turns up, or it's people coming with guns and tanks and they are doing the battering. And either way, it's kind of not good, But thankfully, humanity has evolved, and I'm sure we've seen the last of that. We won't see any more of that nastiness.
We won't see
ever
any more
again.
war for a long time.
No, not at all.
Especially
not
not in the-
invasions.
Especially not in the region Jag's got his,
Got my.
your background. You see
Oh, the
where
map
you've-
thingy.
You see the back.
Oh, right.
For those of
My
you who
room's a
can't see
mess.
it, it's a picture of Europe at night, which
Everything's peaceful there at the moment, isn't it? It's fine. Everything's good.
I hear they're doing well.
yeah, here Europe's
Making
finding
lots of baklava, delicious,
street waffle,
nothing interesting. Yep, yeah.
crazy, strange pornography. Anyway, so.
Eurasia's always been our friend. It's Oceania we've been at war with.
Oh god.
We just did 1984 film.
Oh
It was
god,
awful.
we were so tired for it. So
Part 1 of 1 by how it feels like it's going.
we needed to record an episode for today because we didn't have an episode for today, and so we recorded it and we were so tired. You could hear it in our voices, just like.
I did well. I masked that
And
good.
Jake,
I'm used to masking.
you like Insoc and it was so bad listening to it, and we still released it.
No, we didn't bring Morgan here to toot our own horn.
Oh yeah, we brought him here to toot
We're here
his
to
horn.
toot his horn, so
You leave Morgan's
Toot.
horn alone.
Toot away, gents. Toot away. Let's
So
Let's get
it's
to
always good to have consent. Essential, some would say.
oh, what are you doing?
I'm trying to bring a moral to the story.
You're such a bad otter. Right, so as we wrap up wrap up here because
Wrap up. Did you get to question 3? You had 10 points here.
oh yeah, no, but I've got a little bit of an emergency that I need to deal with, and so we'll just wrap up here. So Morgan, thank you so much for coming on. But can I ask you one last thing?
Of course.
How do you use beta readers?
Yes, I do. Both to get feedback and also to get reviews. So I have an ARC advanced reader copy group to sort of get it out there, get reviews, all that sort of stuff. But my problem is, again, I'm very impatient, and I have so many books coming down the pipeline. It sounds like I'm boasting. There's so many books, but because I have this kind of, the productivity gremlin eating away at my head, I'm always having to, get more things through. So I don't use the beta group for everything. So the first novel in a series, I'll do a lot more of that, because I just want to know, has it got legs? Does it work? Are the people picking up on the things I'm thinking they're going to pick up on, or different? Classic example, the Seven Hungers, the first book that I did. People did not like, not everyone, but people did not like the female lead, or one of the female leads. She was too stern. She was too austere. Now she softens towards the end of the book, and book 2, you start to see more of it, and she develops and all the rest of it. But that really struck me, because I thought, well, I wanted her to be quite harsh in this first book, but it turned some readers off. So things like that are really good for a beta reader group to give you some feedback. My problem is I'm at that stage where I've already released the book, so they're technically not betas anymore. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I'm not going to change it now, because I'm already halfway through book 2 and thinking about book 3. So I'm kind of a product of my own issues with that one. But yes, I have used them, and for different. Whenever I'm starting something new, I tend to use them.
And can I ask, where the hell do you find them?
Okay, so there are. I mean, you can do the usual thing like Facebook groups. You can do, all that sort of stuff. There are groups that will, for the ARC readers, they will find you. So I use a company called Voracious Readers. I found them to be very good. There's Prolific Works as well. Essentially, you pay a certain amount of money a month, and you give away your book to these people, and then you get them in your mailing list. And once they're in your mailing list, then you go to them and you say, hey, I've got my new book, would you like to read it, give feedback? That's basically how you do it, but it takes a while to get that group together. And occasionally you'll find a few people in there that they respond when you ask them questions. You get a bit of a rapport with them, and then you can actually rely on them in that way. But the numbers are maybe 1 in every 100 will respond. So you need a lot in there to get anything out of it. The other thing I've done now is I've paid beta readers through, Fiverr and other services like that, until I found some that are really good. So I've got two now that I use for everything, and they will sort of semi-proofread and beta read as well. Because I have the relationship with them, they're at a good price. It's not going to, cost me thousands of dollars to do. And you just build up that relationship and go from there.
That sounds like a great idea. Tremaine, pay your beta readers.
No. If you want to get paid, you're going to have to actually finish the fucking book.
I would if I was getting paid.
Alright, you get $25 and I'll buy you a slice of pizza when I come down in April.
Oh.
Alright, well... and I won't slap you. Alright, thank you, Morgan.
Of course, we're going to put all of his socials in the description and all that stuff.
Email it to me. So we will put all of Morgan's socials, but Morgan, if you want to just give a quick shout out to your different stuff.
Yeah.
Probably the YouTube especially seems to be a focus.
And
yes, indeed.
And the Kickstarters and the... Yeah, we get it, Jake. He's doing more than me.
Well, look, so easiest way to get me is either go to YouTube at Morgan the Quaid, That's my handle, because apparently handles are a thing now. Or just search for Morgan Quaid on the YouTube.
Vanity is.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Or just go to morganquaid.com and you'll find loads of information there about all my latest projects and stuff. And, by all means, throw your money in my direction and I will reward you with books and such. Or just find me on social media and pester me. I tend to be fairly easy to find. And thank you both, gents, for the opportunity to appear on Tremaine's many, many, many tangents once again.
Thank you. Alright, remember to check us out on Instagram and Facebook as well. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The Space Opera Conductor, which will need to be changed at some point. Thank you, goodbye. Wait, no, that's the call. Okay. I nearly ended the call instead of the